What's up, guys? How's everybody doing today? I hope well. Welcome to another episode of Darth Matu Speaks. I'm sorry that there was a little bit of a gap in between, but as tends to happen, life got in the way. I manage an apartment building for work, and I had one of my tenants pass away. In fact, I was the one that found him. He had tripped, fallen, and broken his neck on his coffee table, and it has stuck in my head ever since. Just something about how sudden it all was. It's not the first time I've had to deal with death, and as I found myself pondering just how fragile our existence can be, I realized that Star Wars, one of my favorite things, also has themes which revolve around death. In fact, some of the most central themes are those that deal with death and death acceptance. The story of the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker is one which hinges on his fear of death, his rejection of it, and more specifically, his rejection of the loss which accompanies death. This is something which isn't readily apparent at first, but which we can see the seeds of from the very beginning. When Anakin is youngest in The Phantom Menace, we get the absolute least amount of material dealing with death and loss. But even here, we can see that Anakin is afraid of loss. Anakin has formed a strong attachment to his mother. She was his life, as mothers tend to be for children his age. It was difficult to leave her, something he could only do after she finally tells him to do it. The Jedi Council even refuses to train him at first, directly stating during his testing that they could tell that he was afraid to lose his mother. Why is this so important? Why should the Jedi care if a small boy loves his mother? It's because the Jedi are all about death acceptance. This is at the heart of their no attachment policy. They take children when they are young, before they can truly form lasting attachments to the people around them. It is super central to the Jedi way. The Order recognizes a few fundamental truths about the Force, like the Force has a will, for example, but they also recognize that the Force is a reflection of life itself.
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes.
The Force is generated by life. Without life, there is no Force. The Jedi see the Force as the collective energy of all living things. To them, the individual is merely an expression of this greater whole, and a Jedi dedicates their lives to the greater good over their own. They do this because they see themselves, and by extension all of life, as interconnected, all literally the same life force. To be attached to any one life form, even your own, over any other would be like being attached to one strand of hair over another. A detached Jedi is able to act in the interest of the greater good, at least on paper. Anakin's attachment to his mother was a problem because it would prevent him from accepting her death, and this, in turn, would hinder him from viewing life as a whole. In many ways, the Jedi were right. As we would see later in Anakin's life, he would have issues letting go of his loved ones. Anakin's mother would eventually be captured by Tusken Raiders, and he would find her just as she was dying. I mean, just look at the emotion on his face while this is happening. It's important to note that despite being older, Anakin has been taken by the Jedi as a child. He's been raised by them within their code, which expressly forbids attachment of any kind. If there is no need for attachment, then there is no need to come up with mechanisms to cope with loss, which means that Anakin has been raised specifically without an ability to process losing his loved ones. So here's Anakin, one of his deepest, worst fears being realized in front of him, literally in his arms. Imagine how he must have felt in that moment. All those emotions and no way to process them. And when you can't process emotions, well, they boil over. And that's exactly what happens. With no means to cope and no outlet, Anakin's grief turns into burning rage, and he commits an atrocity as a result. Things wouldn't get better from there. Anakin would fall in love with and marry Padme Amidala, not exactly remaining unattached. For a while, things would be fine, but eventually Anakin would begin to have visions of Padme dying in childbirth. In the background, you can see the scene where Anakin tells Padme about the visions that he is having. You can see how much it bothers him. He flat out tells his wife that she will die giving birth, and while Padme tries to search for potential solutions to their situation and is immediately concerned for their children, Anakin instead denies anything is wrong and actually insists that things will be fine because he will be able to take care of it. This is death denial at its finest. Anakin is once more faced with the loss of a loved one. He still doesn't have any way to process those feelings, and when no immediate answer to how to prevent this loss appears, he simply denies the problem. Without having an answer, Anakin insists that everything will be fine. This is very obviously a coping mechanism. It's one that we see in small children especially, but which can be apparent in people of all ages. Folks don't like to deal with hard problems. Oftentimes, it is easier to pretend they aren't happening. To Anakin's credit, he at least has enough awareness to know that he should ask for help. And he does go to Yoda to ask the wisest of masters for his advice on the matter. This is as close as we ever see Anakin to openly admitting his relationship with Padme, and it should speak to the level of desperation that he was feeling at the time. Yoda gives him this response.
The fear of loss is a path to the dark side.
I won't let these visions come true, Master Yoda.
Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not. Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
As you can see, not much of an answer from the little green guy. What he just said essentially boils down to just get past it. Everyone dies, so what can you do? This is not a means of coping. Yoda is speaking from a point of self-actualization. He has already put the hard mental and introspective work in to come to the point where he has accepted death. But think about how difficult that is to do. Think about how many people have accepted death in your life. Think about how many times you yourself have sat down and talked, really talked, about the fact that one day, everyone, including yourself, is going to be worm food. This isn't something that most folks deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's scary. Scary because death is hard. It hurts. The emotions can run so high, and it can actually cause physical pain. And people naturally try to avoid that type of thing. Yoda is speaking from a place of mastery. He's telling Anakin what the end result should be, but not how to achieve it. The Jedi, for all their wisdom, had failed to come up with an easy way to process emotions. Their strategy essentially boiled down to repression, and repression is not processing. I mean, just look at Anakin's face at the end of that conversation. Yoda's advice did absolutely nothing to help him. And this is where Anakin truly begins to look elsewhere for answers. And it's where we can start to examine the opposite side of the coin, the Sith. Where the Jedi are all about death acceptance, the Sith are all about death denial. The Jedi try to move past their fear of death to the point where they understand that it is a natural part of life. The Sith accept their fear of death to the point that to them, the zenith of power is control over life itself.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
No.
I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side, he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying.
I think you can begin to understand now why the dark side is so seductive, despite being so obviously negative even physically. Death is truly scary, and accepting death is very hard. It is far, far easier to say, no, I'm going to fight this. I refuse to die. This speaks directly to our animal self-preservation instinct. No one wants to die. It's a natural urge to attempt to preserve your life, and anyone who has ever been in a life-threatening situation will tell you so. It requires the proper, ingrained coping mechanisms to be able to deny any natural urge. And the Jedi, as we have established, were completely lacking in the means to properly establish these coping mechanisms. It's no wonder why, when faced with even the slimmest chance to overcome death, Anakin took it. He had a deep-seated attachment to his wife, and no means to overcome that attachment. His natural fear of her death, and the severe lack of any means to process the emotions which came with it, drove him to try to prevent it at any cost. In many ways, what happened was the inevitable response, given the context that Anakin found himself in. This is not to say that Star Wars says attachment is bad. Quite the opposite. In fact, it's Anakin's attachment to his son which would end up driving him to fulfill his role as Chosen One and toss old Palpatine down a drive shaft. If Anakin had never felt love for his son, then he would have remained Darth Vader and he would have allowed Luke to die. But he didn't. His attachment led directly to his redemption. More than that, it led directly to Anakin fully accepting the inevitability of death.
Luke, help me take this mask off.
But you'll die.
Nothing can stop that now. Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes.
What does this mean? If attachment is the basis of Sith philosophy, which itself is driven by fear of death, then how can attachment lead to redemption and death acceptance? The truth is that neither extreme is right, and the best way to do things as is often the case, lies somewhere in the middle. While, yes, attachment can lead to negative emotions, it is up to the individual to be mature enough to handle those emotions. Death can come at any time, and for no reason at all. Take my word for it. One day you can be alive, breathing and laughing, and less than 12 hours later, you can be stiff and cold, your neck cracked across the corner of a table that you just ate your dinner off of. This is a terrible and frightening thing, but it is also beyond any control. There is no way to account for things beyond your control, and so you simply have to accept them. Death is coming, one way or the other. But this is not a reason to give up attachment and simply wait passively until the end. If death is coming, and it can arrive at any time, then how can anybody waste even 1 second? The fact that everything is so fleeting and can be snatched away so easily should make us more attached. If any given second could be the last time that you see your loved ones, then petty troubles and issues should be that much easier to let go. If people can be gone in the blink of an eye, then you had better love them as much as possible while they're here. The fact that any one of us could go within the next minute should preclude us wasting time worrying about insecurities. There is no time to waste, so we had better deal with these insecurities and correct them as soon as possible. This is one of many things that the story of Anakin's rise and fall is designed to show us. Fear of death is shown as corrupting, driving people to do terrible things in the names of the ones they love. But death acceptance, untempered by attachment, is shown to breed a kind of apathy which leads the individual to be completely unprepared to deal with life. This is the Jedi Order's greatest weakness, and it's the source of their stagnation. Our attachments are not a weakness. Our lack of introspection and our lack of self-discipline is. Love can save you, even from the darkest and most terrible hole. To be afraid of death is not necessarily a bad thing, but to pretend that there is anything at all that you can do about it is. This ties back to the concept of the Tao, of yin and yang. Both things must be true for the whole to be whole. We have to not only accept death, but fear it. Both things are inevitable. You have to have darkness and light. And only when we accept these facts will we have any power to process the emotions that come with mortality. Alright guys, bit of a heavy one this week. But yeah, this is just me doing my usual thing and using Star Wars to help process the experiences in my day-to-day life. Yeah, share with me down in the comments what you guys thought. Let me know what you think the themes of life and death within Star Wars are, how they're expressed, and what they mean to you. You can even drop a comment letting me know how you use Star Wars to help you deal with your day-to-day life. But for now, I'm gonna stop running my mouth. If you like the video, please drop a like, please subscribe. It helps out a lot. And I hope everyone has an awesome weekend. Everybody stay safe, stay well, and as always, may the Force break your chains.